All right, we're live in studio. I see Patrick has first blood this morning. We're going to go ahead and get it. All right. Good morning, everybody. It is Monday morning. We've been through the weekend. We shared the news over the weekend that we have, the Brushfire Mind, we have officially been accepted into the Rumble Creator Program. We did our first Rumble Premium exclusive Saturday evening. You should go check that out. You should sign up for the Rumble Premium package. Get the hell off of YouTube. If you happen to be watching on YouTube and you are not already subscribed, I still do want you to subscribe on YouTube, right? Like and share. The YouTube algorithm boosts the show up and increases followership and viewership and all the important numbers. And it's this easy, guys. The more people we can reach on YouTube, the more people we can convince to get off of YouTube, to get the hell away from the censorship regime that has so desperately damaged the world. And I do mean the world, because as you're going to see as we go through the stories this morning on today's episode, America, as goes America, so goes the world. And so we're going to dig into that this morning. Over the weekend, there was the Europeans got together to have a little summit. And what has happened, if you guys watched us on Saturday, we went into great detail on the nature and the expected results of what they're calling an explosive row in the White House. But what really happened is old Zelensky showed up in his sweatpants to the White House to demand, not beg, demand that the United States give him more money, right? And I'll gloss over it a little bit here because we covered it in so much detail on Saturday. And by the way, the Rumble Premium exclusive content that we produced Saturday evening after the show on all platforms Saturday, Mario broke out the high-level intel analysis on the history of the Ukraine and really explained in great detail one of those things that we've gone back to repeatedly, without trying to make the argument that Putin's a good guy. We're not making that argument. The fact is that Zelensky has been kind of waving his finger in his face and leaning on American support to basically attempt to pressure Putin into taking an action, into doing something stupid, so that on behalf of his American Democrat backers, he could begin an endless war to be an endless money pump from the American taxpayer. So over the weekend, in response to that debacle, so to be clear, they had a deal. They had the mineral deal. All Zelensky had to do was sign the deal, and that would have been the end of the conflict. He didn't even have to come in. I want you guys to remember that as you see all the headlines, about Trump losing his temper and Trump advance being disrespectful and decorum, et cetera, et cetera. I want you to never forget this. Zelensky could have signed the deal and ended the conflict without ever even coming to the United States. The deal was in place, ready to go. Zelensky insisted on coming to the White House and having that meeting instead of just signing the deal. So if you ever have a question about anybody's motives in all of this, the motives are very clear. The deal was there, and Zelensky thought, you know what? If I go and show up, I can make an ass of myself on national television with the president and guilt trip him into sending us another several $100 billion, which, oh, by the way, more than half of the original 170 some billion dollars is missing. If you ever suspected for a second that Zelensky's not basically buying himself out on the American dole, then you're just not paying attention. So over the weekend, they got together, and I took the thumbnail this morning from the photo op from all the European leaders, and oh my God, look at these people. You must be this tall to ride democracy, and none of them are. So the Europe seeks to take control of Ukraine negotiations after Zelensky's nightmare. Trump visit sparks panic. Okay. Seeks to take control of Ukraine negotiations. All right. I have a question for our European allies. We stand with Ukraine. We stand with Zelensky, who's defending democracy. It's been a year since Zelensky suspended elections and essentially declared himself emperor for life, right? Keep that in mind as well. Zelensky is relying on the Ukrainian constitution, which gives him the authority to declare martial law, which he has. And martial law gives him the legal authority under Ukrainian law to suspend elections. So if peace breaks out between Russia and Ukraine, the money pit, the gravy train stops, and Zelensky has to face an election. Ukraine may have an interest in ending the war and the dying. Zelensky personally does not. In fact, all of the political motivation and impetus for Zelensky is tied up in keeping the money flowing and staying in power. If a peace deal is signed with Russia, then Zelensky is going to have to let his citizens tell him whether or not they want him to continue to be the president. And of course, after what just happened, that's even less likely than it may have been previously. Now, as far as the rest of the European leadership, standing together with Ukraine, arm in arm, blah, blah, blah. No. Let me explain to you. So, I've drawn up a somewhat comprehensive list, a relatively comprehensive list. So, U.S. defense spending through NATO. U.S. contributes more than 70% of total NATO defense spending, right? And that's with almost, I think Poland is the only European country to date that is actually contributing the required 2%. Over the weekend, we heard, what's his name? Castro's boy, Trudeau, say that Canada is now on track to begin meeting their 2% of GDP requirement as soon as 2035. Already? So you've got that. Then you've got foreign aid and reconstruction. Guys, the Marshall Plan is still a thing. The Marshall Plan, where we rebuilt Germany after World War II, dumped billions of dollars. By the way, $13 billion at the time, right? which in today's dollars is $135 billion that we dumped into rebuilding the world that the Nazis burned down. And on top of that, part of the Marshall Plan for that entire period to date, up to still currently ongoing, is that all of these countries have they have these massive tariffs against the U.S., and the U.S. employs almost no retaliatory tariffs against them. That's one of the big things that Trump keeps talking about with tariffs. It's not like it's happening in a bubble, in a vacuum, right? Everybody else is charging these huge tariffs. We had one of our shorts recently. Mario was talking about the tariffs a little bit, and some smartass left a comment like, "Oh, try again, magatard. U.S. produced 3 million cars last year, and Europe produced 10 million cars last year." I'm like, you seem to not understand that the problem is that the Europeans are outproducing American auto manufacturers precisely because they have 100% tariffs on American auto, and Americans don't have 100% tariffs against their automobiles. Right? See, so there's profit in building automobiles overseas and not building them over here. In fact, a lot of cars that are American made, the parts are manufactured overseas and then assembled here, if you're lucky. And that has a lot to do with tariffs and tax rates, right? So that's the foreign aid and reconstruction plans stuff, and that's not even talking about the $12.4 billion that Ukraine got in 2022, almost entirely separate from the Russian conflict currently. Of course, you've got the trade deficits, massive trade deficits, just like I was talking about with the auto industry. I mean, shit, you want to get into drone flight so you can do real estate photography like I do? You're going to buy a Chinese drone, period. That's your option. There are no high-quality commercial American drone manufacturers. They don't exist. And that's largely because of onerous FAA regulations on the manufacturer. That is not by accident. So, support for international organizations. We are the majority funder of things like the UN's budget, the IMF and World Bank. That's all us. That's all American money. So everything that keeps the world spinning is American productivity. Even today, when the United States manufacturing base has been gutted by these onerous demands and subsidizations and onerous foreign tariffs designed to expatriate our manufacturing workforce, even in the face of that, we are still the world's financier. We fund the planet. Don't forget, on top of that, throughout the whole Ukraine-Russia maneuver, we've been subsidizing and we've been exporting subsidized natural gas to Europe to try and prevent Europe from becoming more dependent on Russian energy production. Right? Next time you go fill up your gas tank, remember, the price is what the price is because Biden shut off the Keystone XL pipeline construction, exported the money to fund the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and then on top of that, increased the export of LNP to Europe in order to try and artificially reduce Russia's power in that market. Now, in all fairness, using our energy to weaken a foreign adversary and support allies is a strategically good maneuver. But if that's going to be the maneuver, why do you start by first weakening your own energy production infrastructure. Hey guys, we're going to war. We should stop making bullets and sell half the ones we've already got. So the Lilliputians of Europe all got together to hold hands and suck each other off and demand more American money. The West is at a crossroads in history. Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer told European leaders at a pivotal summit in London on Sunday as the continent sought to wrestle control of negotiations over the Russia-Ukraine war away from the U.S. and present a united front amid a meltdown in relations between Kiev and Washington. Here's what you got going on. You grew up. You left the house. You got a good job. You bought a nice house. And 5 or 6 of your closest buddies from high school just got out of jail. They're layabout inebriates who desperately need a place to stay, and you let them sleep on your couch. And now you come home from work every day to listen to them argue about which restaurant you are going to pay to order takeout from. That's the world. That's the world. The United States has a nice, big, pretty house, and every other son of a bitch on the planet thinks he gets to crash in our basement and dictate what we order for dinner. And they expect to be fed, and no ramen noodle bullshit, right? Right? Let me be very clear, guys. If I got to put you on my couch for a week, I will feed you ramen noodles for 35 cents a metric ton. Because hopefully, while you're sitting there sucking on your salty noodles, you'll wish you had a bite of my steak and get interested in going out and getting a damn job. My kids eat good, not the bums. Right? You know, it's one thing to say everybody deserves to have food in their belly. It's quite another thing for that food to be Wagyu beef on my dime. This is not a moment for more talk. It's time to act, Starmer said after reminding me. Okay, it's time to act. This is not a moment for more talk. So we got together to talk more. The European leaders are getting together to say that it's time to take action and take the negotiations away from the U.S. Where you been, Europe? Where the hell were you for the last 2 years, 3 years? Where were you for the last 3 years while this was going on? Were you spending hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars? Were you sending needed military equipment? Troops? No. The most valuable political maneuver that Keir Starmer has made since Russia began hostilities in 2022 was to change his X profile to the Ukrainian flag. Slava Ukraine! And you know, it's funny. Keir Starmer's name, that's Starmer. I mean, he sounds like a Nazi, right? So of course he's pro-Ukraine. Of course he's against Putin's denazification of Ukraine. Now, don't get it twisted. Putin is still a bad guy. He is. I mean, make no mistake. Putin is a pure product of the USSR's KGB. I'm telling you guys, deep undercover, Jack Barsky. Go watch the Two Spooks episode that I did a couple of years ago, where we sat down and talked about. I sat down with a no shit retired KGB agent who is a contemporary of Vladimir Putin in the KGB. Right? They didn't work together closely. But they were there at the same time. Unverified Bear says something I said is not true. Please tell me. Hit me. But go check out the video where I sat down with Jack Barsky, and we did talk about who and what Putin is in that video. And of course, at the time, Biden was still president, and the professional military strategic intelligence analysis of an American spook and a KGB spook discussing the topic is there are no good guys, because you've got three major sides in that conflict, right? You've got Putin, you've got Zelensky, you've got, right? So you got Russia, Ukraine, and the US. Putin, Zelensky, and Biden. Nobody, no good guys. Unverified Bear says Britain had bankrupted itself with donations. Thank you, because you're helping to make my point. He says from tens of billions in our cash to our tanks, SP artillery, etc. Yes, correct. And that's part of the point, is that Britain can bankrupt itself by sending merely tens of billions, while the United States is still going strong. While our economy is suffering, but we're not actually completely bankrupted after having sent $250 billion, more than $250 billion if you include the cost of all the military equipment. So you've got the nearly $200 billion in just straight cash, more than half of which is missing, plus the difficult to estimate cost of troops, training operations, and military equipment. Because remember, not putting boots on the ground in conflict, American soldiers firing weapons, that's nice and everything, but we're still sending men and women over there to do work on behalf. That also costs money. And Bear, don't mistake what I was saying there as an attack on the British generally. The point is that the British economy is not the U.S. economy, and so all these leaders getting together, y'all were already broke. That's true. That's fair. And that's kind of the point that I'm making, is that this entire conflict has only been able to persist because the U.S. has been pumping money into it. And what their real concern is, like I was saying a minute ago, with Zelensky being interested in keeping the cash spigot open and keeping the war going so he doesn't have to reinstate elections. If the U.S. stops funding the thing, if the U.S. stops paying the money for this thing, it ends. It's over. I mean, that's it. It's over. Either the Ukraine folds completely, and either the Ukraine dies or the Ukraine surrenders. That's it. Ukraine says, Putin will give you whatever you want, and they take whatever deal he offers them, or they just all die. Those without America saying, hey, we want this to stop, and this is what we're willing to do to make that happen, then Putin gets everything he wants. And no amount of faux European solidarity changes that reality. It just doesn't. Sergeant Major says, I remember when the redcoats were the enemy and easy to identify. He does. Sergeant Major, my dad and I, we crack jokes about being old and being old veterans and stuff, but we're an old veteran family. And when I say an old veteran family, I mean blood on every battlefield in U.S. history. American veteran family. So the urgency of the summit. So let me go ahead and pop over to this other story, and this will be the one that I close on, because this is where we've come as a result of that summit. Volodymyr Zelensky rejects calls for immediate Ukraine-Russia ceasefire. That headline right there tells you everything that you need to know. That what I was just saying is absolutely on point. Zelensky rejects calls for immediate Ukraine-Russia ceasefire. Because a ceasefire is not a deal. It's not peace. Right? Little perspective here. America, the United States of America, is and has been continuously, for longer than I've been alive, at war with North Korea. We have a demilitarized zone, right? Right? You got the parallel cutting right across the peninsula. You can look at it on Google Maps and see the big black hole that is the socialist, the communist nation of North Korea. But we haven't fired a shot at each other across that line in some time. Now, it almost all went to shit with the cherry tree we chopped down, but, and Dad, I know it wasn't a cherry tree, but the story's better with cherry. Cherries are delicious. But there's an armistice. So we haven't negotiated a peace treaty. We haven't signed a peace deal with North Korea. But we stopped killing each other. Zelensky has rejected a call for an immediate ceasefire. I mean, even without a deal, if you can get both sides to say, hey, we'll order our troops to stand down while we discuss the possibility of peace. This tells you right here that Zelensky is not interested in peace, because peace does not come, it doesn't keep his welfare spigot open. And it doesn't allow him to maintain the illusion of a need for martial law. Peace means Zelensky stops getting his paycheck and loses his power. Now, there are other stories out there that say that Zelensky has offered to step down. I'll get back to that in a minute. So, Zelensky has rejected calls for Ukraine to agree to an immediate ceasefire in its war with Russia. Excuse me. Saying it would be failure for everyone if cessation of hostilities were not accompanied by detailed security guarantees. Idiot. There were no detailed security guarantees to establish the armistice with North Korea. And yet that armistice persists. Despite a lack of a treaty, despite a lack of peace negotiations. And, okay, it's not that there's a lack of peace negotiations. We still attempt frequently to negotiate peace. But, So, the defiant Ukrainian president said he saw no need to make amends for an explosive row with Donald Trump. Son, you came to the White House and tried to shake down the king deal maker. You stepped in it. You absolutely stepped in it. Trump and his allies have said Kiev should be willing to agree to a ceasefire, a point echoed by Lord Peter Mandelson, the UK's ambassador to Washington, on Sunday. Zelensky said Russia's failure to abide by a ceasefire in eastern Ukraine after invading in 2014 convinced him that it would be a mistake to agree to stop fighting without an enforcement mechanism backed up by military force. Idiot. You're an idiot, Zelensky. Yes, it's possible that Putin will break a ceasefire. Absolutely. It is possible. But It's also not possible for him to not break a ceasefire if there's not a ceasefire. Right? Think about this diplomatically. Agree to a ceasefire with no conditions or terms, just, hey, two heads of state, commanders in chief of their armed services, agree to order their armed services to stand down with no other consideration. Hey, just ceasefire. Everybody, hold up. Let's talk. Assume talks break down and go as bad as they possibly could. Even that, just not killing each other for a few days, is better than the alternative that Zelensky leaves the door open for, which is not an alternative. It is just the status quo, stacking bodies. Stacking so many bodies, by the way, that Ukraine has instituted a draft. We've covered this twice now, I think, on the show. Ukraine has a draft right now for all military-age men, which within the narrow definition of their law is something like for I think it's 25 to 60 or something like that. And they're working right now to lower the draft age because they're running out of 25 to 60-year-old Ukrainians to dump into the meat grinder. Hey, young single Americans looking for a lady. There's about to be a massive oversupply in Ukraine because they're just cranking their dicks right through the meat machine. No more sausage in Ukraine, boys. That is about to be a total taco party. So if you don't already have a horde of beautiful children running around your yard, maybe go pick you up one of the, go save a Ukrainian refugee. Ukrainian leader was asked about a report in French newspaper Le Figaro that France and the UK had proposed a month-long truce in the air, at sea, and on energy infrastructure, but declined to comment. He's just refusing peace. Like I said, Zelensky's not interested in peace. So what are Zelensky's demands? From U.S. Homeland Security News, Zelensky demands Russia surrenders and accepts full blame, returns all territories, including Crimea, pays Ukraine $500 billion in war reparations. Putin steps down and is tried for war crimes. What? Wait, what? What? Does that sound? Russia surrenders, pays us $500 billion, cedes back all the territory that they've gained. And he says, including Crimea. So let's be clear. Russia took territory previously, right? Under Obama, under Bush the Lesser, under Clinton, Russia expanded, took back some territory that it lost when the Soviet Union collapsed. And that territory has been Russia since they took it, respectively 15, 20, 30 years ago. But Russia took that territory and already, so he's not even talking about the red zone that Mario and I have pointed out with the Donbass and all that they've taken in this current conflict. Zelensky's demanding that Russia give up territory that it already has as part of the deal. Pay $500 billion, $500 billion, and just, here's some money. And that as part of the peace deal, Putin agrees to step down and submit himself to The Hague for trial for war crimes. and the West takes over the Russian Federation. Right? These are demand. These are untenable demands. Russia's never going to agree to that. Now, it may be that Zelensky is not a total idiot, in which case the only other alternative is he doesn't want Russia to agree to the demands. You make onerous, unreasonable demands when you don't want people to meet the demands. Right? Come to me. Come to me because you want me to make a wedding video for you. You want it to be 2 hours long. You want the final video to be 2 hours long. You've got meth mouth and everybody's ugly. Yeah, I'll make your video. That'll be $10,000. That'll be $10,000 for the base package, no drone. Oh man, that's too much. I do a pretty good product. I'm worth the money. Yeah, but we can't afford that. Yeah, I know. Obviously. Like, I'll take your money, but if I don't want to work with you, I'm going to take a lot of it. Right? I mean, it ain't that complicated. If Donald Trump was to knock on my door and say, "Hey, I want you to make a documentary about how NASCAR was created by prohibition," be like, "Hell yeah, I'm there." If Joe Biden shows up and says, "Hey, Lowry, I want you to make a documentary about why trans boys and women's sports is super important," be like, "Hell yeah, here's an invoice," and it's a big one. Sergeant Major points out that Putin has already been convicted in The Hague. Yeah, and that's really slowed him down, hasn't it? So, yeah, let's put a pin in this. What's the conclusion? Zelensky is not interested in peace. The so-called European leaders are not interested in peace. All they're interested in is anything they can do to expand forever wars and keep the American military-industrial complex dumping free money into their ass pockets. It's that simple. These are socialists. These are communists. They see you on TV on a yacht drinking champagne surrounded by beautiful women in bikinis. And they don't think, "Man, that looks good. I wonder what he does for a living. I wonder how I get there, how I get to where I could be at parties like that." No. They look at America, they see freedom and hot dogs and cherry pie, and they say, "That looks really good. We should murder everybody and take it from them." It's not fair. It's not fair that the guy with a job can afford to pay for a house. We should murder him, take it from him, and give it to somebody who doesn't want to work. It is the LBJ Great Society on the international scale. And I want you guys to start paying closer attention to this, right? All over the world, drugs are cheaper because we pay for all the science. We pay for all the innovation. We pay for all the technological development. They get their socialized medicine because we pay for their defense. We pay for their energy production. We pay for the technological development. Everything that exists outside of the United States is paid for by the United States. It's at least largely subsidized by the United States, to such a degree that I would go so far as to say it is all paid for by the United States entirely, because to the extent that it exists, it is subsidized into existence and ceases to exist without subsidization. Ergo, whatever part of it isn't directly U.S. taxpayer money only exists as a result of the influx of U.S. taxpayer money. And ironically, that's essentially everywhere on the planet except for China, because China does it all on slave wages, intellectual property theft, and artificially manipulated currency exchange rates. That's the world you live in. That's it. And what we're seeing now is the mask slipping. They're not interested in peace. They're interested in your tax dollars. So thanks for watching this morning, guys. That's all I've got today. I got to get on the road and go shoot some houses this morning. Yay! And I do actually mean yay. I like doing the work I do. So thanks for watching this morning. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.